It was a Tuesday night when the ground beneath my life quietly cracked open, and I didn't even realize it until it was far too late. I was slicing into a pan of reheated chicken pot pie, something simple I'd thrown together after work, while Thomas sat across from me, scrolling through his phone, not saying much. Liam was upstairs in his room, probably watching basketball highlights on YouTube, the faint bounce of his ball still echoing in the garage. We hadn't been arguing. We hadn't even been talking. That's why when he set his fork down, cleared his throat, and said, "I think it's time for a DNA test," my first instinct was to laugh. Except he didn't. He just looked at me, flat, unreadable, and went back to cutting his food, like he'd asked me to pick up milk on the way home, not drop a bomb on 15 years of marriage. I blinked. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" He didn't look up. A DNA test. For Liam. I put my fork down too. "Is this some kind of joke, Thomas?" "No. I've had my doubts for a while. I think it's time we just know." I sat frozen, staring at the man I had built a whole life with. The man who'd cut the umbilical cord in that hospital room. The man who'd once cradled Liam in his arms, like the boy was his whole world. And now he was talking like Liam was some math equation he needed to solve. "What doubts?" I asked. My voice was low even, but I could feel something tearing just under the surface. "It doesn't matter. The results will speak for themselves." That night I couldn't sleep. I lay beside him in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling fan as it spun in slow, hypnotic circles, wondering how long he had been thinking this, wondering if this was really about Liam, or if it was about something else entirely. The silence between us wasn't just cold. It was clinical, like we were two strangers sharing a hospital room, waiting for different outcomes. I didn't tell anyone. Not my sister, not my best friend Monica, not even Liam's pediatrician, who'd known him since he was 2 and once called him the most emotionally attuned kid I've ever met. I held it all in. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just counted the fan blades again and again, while my husband slept beside me as if he hadn't just dropped a grenade into our lives. 2 days later, we were at the clinic. The technician was sweet, maybe too sweet, like she could already tell something wasn't right. Liam didn't know what was happening. Thomas had told him it was just a family health panel, whatever that meant. And I just stood there, letting it happen. Swabbed cheeks, sealed envelopes, painless and brutal all at once. We went home, and the waiting began. Every hour felt like wet wool draped over my shoulders. Heavy, itchy, impossible to ignore. And Thomas, he barely spoke. Left early. Came home late. Ate dinner in silence. Not even a good night, Elaine. Just nothing. I started to feel invisible. But I also started to pay attention. To how quickly he shut his laptop when I entered the room. To how he locked his phone now when he used to leave it charging on the kitchen counter. 15 years of marriage. And suddenly I was the stranger, not him. And all I could think was, what if this wasn't just about Liam at all? What if I was being tested for something deeper? Something I didn't even know I was failing. The results were supposed to take a week. They took 9 days. 9 days where everything in our home went quiet. Not peaceful quiet, hollow quiet. The kind where no one speaks unless absolutely necessary. And even then, the words are rationed like supplies in a war. Thomas stopped saying good morning. Stopped asking if I needed anything from the store. Stopped brushing his hand against mine when we passed in the hallway. He was there in the same house, sleeping in the same bed, but his presence felt like a shadow that didn't belong to him. He left earlier for work, stayed later, and when he did come home, it was like watching a ghost eat dinner. Silent, disconnected. And Liam, he noticed. One night, while picking at his peas, he glanced up and asked quietly, "Is Dad mad at you?" I froze, smiled like nothing was wrong. "No, sweetheart, he's just tired." But even as I said it, I could feel the lie pressing against my tongue like a splinter. Because, truthfully, Thomas wasn't tired. He was withdrawing. Strategically. like a man preparing to leave but waiting for the right excuse to run. The sixth night, I started watching him more closely. He took his phone into the garage for calls, kept his laptop closed and locked. The password had changed. Thomas used to show me everything. Articles about kitchen renovations we'd never do. Forecast charts from his job that he didn't expect me to understand. He used to care about the little things, even the boring ones. Now, nothing. I opened the laptop once while he was in the shower. It asked for a password, something it had never done before. That was the first time I felt a chill deep in my spine. Not because I suspected infidelity, not yet, but because I realized I was being shut out from the life I thought I was part of. The next morning, I called Monica. She's not just my best friend, she's a lawyer. Practical, sharp, never minces words. I think something's wrong, I told her. She paused. Something with Liam? No, something with Thomas. He wants a DNA test. Out of nowhere. And now, he's different. Distant. She didn't say, I told you so, though she probably could have. Elaine, she said softly, do you think this is about Liam at all? I didn't answer, because deep down I was beginning to suspect it wasn't. I wanted to believe this was about insecurity, a moment of irrational fear. But something else lingered under Thomas's silence. Something sharp, premeditated. The eighth day, I asked him, carefully without accusation, what made him start doubting Liam. He didn't even look up from the sports section, just muttered, a few things doesn't matter now. The results will speak for themselves. That should have been a red flag. A normal man, one still in love, would have offered clarity, reassurance, something. Instead, I felt like I was already on trial, and the judge was just waiting for the lab to hand down the sentence. So I sat in that house, mother to a boy I loved more than life, wife to a man who was slowly vanishing, and all I could think was, what if everything I thought I knew about this family was already broken? It was a Friday morning, just after 9, when we returned to the clinic. The sky outside was gray, heavy with the threat of rain. I hadn't touched my coffee. Couldn't. My stomach felt like it was lined with glass shards. Liam was already at school. Thank God. Thomas drove in silence, one hand steady on the wheel, the other resting on the gear shift like it was the only thing keeping him tethered. I kept mine clenched in my lap, nails biting into my palms. When we arrived, the receptionist smiled too brightly. Mr. and Mrs. Parker? Right this way. The hallway to the exam room felt longer than I remembered. The doctor, a man in his early 60s with tired eyes and a slow voice, greeted us with a nod. He didn't open the file right away. He just looked at us for a long moment. Before I begin, he said gently, I need to ask, are you emotionally prepared for what you're about to hear? I swallowed hard, looked at Thomas. He didn't flinch, didn't even blink, just nodded. Yes. I couldn't speak. My voice had vanished somewhere between the parking lot and the chair I now sat in. The doctor opened the file. Each page he turned made the air in the room feel heavier, louder, and then, according to the analysis, he said, placing a finger on the paper, the probability of paternity is 0%. My ears rang. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt nothing, like someone had pressed pause on my insides. Thomas leaned back in his chair, exhaled through his nose, and muttered, I knew it. But the doctor wasn't done. He wasn't looking at Thomas anymore. He was looking at me. There's something else, he said carefully. Something that concerns me as a medical professional. Thomas straightened. What are you talking about? The doctor glanced between us, then returned his gaze to me. I ran the standard genetic protocol, not just between father and son, but mother and son as well. I blinked. Why? I whispered, because something in the markers didn't line up. And, Mrs. Parker, I need to tell you that Liam isn't biologically related to either of you. The words dropped like lead. I stared at him, not comprehending. That's not possible, I said quietly. I gave birth to him. I held him. I believe you, he said gently. But you need to speak to the hospital where he was born. There's a rare possibility of a neonatal mix-up. Thomas's chair scraped loudly against the floor as he stood. His face was red, fists clenched. You're saying we've been raising a stranger's kid for 15 years? The doctor didn't respond. Didn't need to. The silence said it all. We left the clinic without another word. The moment the front door of our house shut behind us, Thomas turned on me. I knew it. I knew something was off. But this is beyond anything I imagined. I didn't know, I whispered. Thomas, I didn't. You had one job, Elaine, he snarled. One. And with that, he slammed the door to the guest bedroom. His new sanctuary. His escape. I was left alone in the living room, clutching my purse like it might somehow hold answers. Later that night, I opened the box from Liam's birth, the wristbands, the faded birth certificate, the photos of me swollen-eyed but glowing, cradling him just hours old. I knew that boy was mine. I didn't care what the paper said. But now, I had no idea how to prove it. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table staring at a cup of cold coffee, not drinking it, just watching the steam long gone. Thomas didn't come downstairs. I heard him moving around above me, deliberate steps heavy, like the sound of someone packing or deciding not to care. He didn't say goodbye when he left for work. No door slam, no note, just silence. When Liam walked out the door to catch the bus, I waited exactly 1 minute before picking up the phone. The hospital name was still printed on the back of the file folder where I kept all of Liam's birth documents. Riverbend Medical Center. The name I hadn't thought about in years. The place where it all began, or went wrong. The line rang 7 times before a woman picked up. Riverbend Medical. How can I help you? I tried to keep my voice steady. I need to speak to someone about a possible neonatal mix-up. There was a pause, then another voice, then a transfer to records, then to administration. After 11 minutes on hold, a tired man finally picked up. You're talking about an incident from 2009, he asked. Yes, I said. January 4th. It was an emergency C-section. My son might not be mine. He sighed. Our electronic records only go back 10 years. You'd have to submit a formal request, possibly even a subpoena. A subpoena? I echoed. I just need to know who else gave birth that day. I'm sorry, ma'am. Even if I wanted to help, HIPAA regulations prevent me from sharing any identifying information about other patients. Of course, privacy laws, the invisible wall that stands between right and truth. I hung up the phone, hands trembling, heart racing. Then I stood, grabbed my coat and keys, and walked out the door. If they wouldn't talk on the phone, I would go there myself. The drive to Riverbend felt like crossing into another version of reality. The town had changed. The signage was new, but the parking lot was exactly the same. I parked in the same row Thomas did 15 years ago, the night he rushed me in, holding my hand, telling me everything would be okay. Inside, the hospital smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee. At the front desk, I asked to speak to someone in medical records. The young woman gave me a hesitant smile and a rehearsed line. I'm sorry, ma'am, without a court order. My child was likely switched at birth here, I interrupted. I'm not asking for names or addresses. I just need to know who else gave birth that day. Please. She stared at me for a long moment, then glanced over her shoulder. Wait here. 10 minutes passed. Then a woman in her 60s approached. Gray hair neatly pinned back, glasses low on her nose, but her eyes were sharp. Her badge read, Margaret Ellis, Patient Services Director. I remember you, she said softly before I could speak. You were in room 212. Emergency C-section. We almost lost you. I blinked. You remember me? She nodded. I've worked here for over 40 years. Some stories stay with you. She motioned for me to follow her down a quiet hallway to her office. We sat across from each other, the hum of fluorescent lights above us the only sound. I told her everything. The DNA test, the results, the numbness, the impossible question I now had to ask. Margaret listened in silence. Then she opened a locked cabinet and pulled out a slim binder, one with handwritten entries. We were in the middle of transitioning to digital records back then, she explained. Some things still exist in paper form. Her finger slid slowly down the columns. There were 4 births that day. 1 girl, 3 boys. You were the only C-section. My pulse quickened. Is it possible someone made a mistake? She exhaled, the sound slow and tired. That week was chaos. 2 nurses out sick. The maternity floor was understaffed. I won't lie to you. Yes, it's possible. She closed the binder, then looked me square in the eye. But proving it, you'll need legal help. And fast. If there was a switch, it may have gone unnoticed for 15 years. But someone else out there might be asking the same question soon. I didn't go home after that. I couldn't. I sat in my car in the parking lot, hands wrapped around the steering wheel like I was bracing for impact. The winter sun dipped below the roof of the old maternity wing. Shadows stretched across the lot like cracks forming in everything I thought was solid. A child not mine, but mine in every way that mattered. I gave birth, or thought I did. I raised him, sang him to sleep, bandaged scraped knees, stayed up through fevers and school dances and heartbreaks over goldfish. What does blood matter when your soul is already stitched to someone? Still, I had to know, and to know I needed a lawyer. I called Monica first. She didn't answer at work, but when I left a message that said, "I need a lawyer who won't laugh at the words, 'baby switch,'" she called back within 5 minutes. "You're serious," she said. "I'm dead serious. I know someone, Nathan Marks. He's handled a few weird negligence cases, medical ones. He's not cheap, but he doesn't scare easy." By the next morning, I was sitting across from him in his downtown office. The sky was overcast, windows fogged slightly from the heater inside. Nathan looked like a man who hadn't slept through the night in years, mid-40s, sharp features, tired but focused eyes. I told him everything. The DNA results, Margaret's binder, her voice when she said, "Yes, it's possible," the silence in my home, the child I couldn't lose, even if biology said I already had. Nathan listened without interruption. When I finished, he tapped his pen against a yellow legal pad and said, "I've heard of 2 other cases like this. One took nearly a year to settle. The other, they never found the biological parents. And what if the other family finds out first?" I asked. He looked at me, his voice steady. "Depends what they want. Contact, custody, sometimes just closure. But no matter what, this will get messy. Emotionally, legally, especially for your son." I nodded. I hadn't told Liam anything yet. Every time I looked at him, my throat locked up. How do you explain to a child that everything he believes about himself might not be true? That night, I sat on my bed with a box of old photos. I'd been trying not to cry for days, but my eyes burned anyway. And then I saw it, a picture from the hospital. Me in the hospital bed, pale and swollen with anesthesia, hair stuck to my forehead. In the background, a young nurse, blonde hair, startled eyes, holding a swaddled baby. Her badge was crooked, unreadable. I stared at that photo for a long time, flipped it over. In Thomas's handwriting, scrawled across the back, Elaine and Liam. January 4th, 2009. I called Margaret the next morning. My voice shook, but I got the words out. Was there a nurse working the night of my delivery? Young, blonde, looked about 20. There was a long pause on the other end. "Yes," Margaret said softly. "That was Mara Penbrook. She was new, first month on the floor. What happened to her?" "She quit. 2 weeks later. No notice." Mara Penbrook, the only real name I had. It took Nathan's private investigator 4 days to find her. Not much to go on. No LinkedIn, no nursing license renewals, no wedding announcements. She'd disappeared from the medical world entirely, but she hadn't vanished. She was living under a new last name, Mara Jennings, in a town 2 hours north, working part-time at a flower shop wedged between a diner and a bait-and-tackle store. I didn't wait. The drive wound through empty country roads and cold pine forests. The snow on the shoulder had crusted into gray ridges. My mind spun in endless loops, rehearsing conversations I had no idea how to start. Hi, I think you might have handed me the wrong baby 15 years ago. No. Hello. You probably don't remember me, but I've remembered you every day since my world cracked open. Closer, but still no good. The bell over the flower shop door jingled when I stepped inside. The scent of eucalyptus and lilies wrapped around me. Behind the counter, trimming a bouquet, was a woman in her mid-30s. Blonde hair tied back, slim build, same eyes as in the photo. She looked up. Her hands stopped moving. "Can I help you?" she asked. I swallowed. "Mara." She froze. "I'm sorry, do I?" "I'm Elaine Parker," I said softly. "I gave birth at Riverbend Medical. January 4th, 2009. You were there." Her smile dropped. Recognition flickered. Then panic. I don't remember. Please," I whispered. "I don't want to ruin your life. I just want to understand." She didn't tell me to leave. That was something. She walked me to the back room, past buckets of carnations and baby's breath, and motioned for me to sit on an overturned crate. "I was 21, she said finally. "It was my second week. That night was chaos. 2 women in labor, 1 natural, 1 emergency. I was overwhelmed. Someone rushed me. I thought I had it right. I really did." I said nothing. Let the silence speak. She blinked back tears. I realized something felt off days later. I went to my supervisor. She told me not to say anything. Said it would ruin lives. That it was probably nothing. "So you quit," I said. She nodded. "I remember the other woman. Her baby was fussy. Wouldn't sleep. She looked exhausted." "Do you remember her name?" "I only remember her first name. Lorna. She had red hair. Her husband worked in construction, I think. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to find the woman who might be Liam's biological mother. Lorna. Red hair. Husband in construction. That was all I had." Nathan ran the name through every database he could access. It took days, but then a record surfaced. Lorna Blake, 24 years old at the time of delivery. Address, 2 towns over. She had given birth to a baby boy. Natural delivery. No complications. Discharged 48 hours later. My hands shook as I held the printout Nathan slid across the table. "Are you sure you want to do this yourself?" he asked. "I have to." The next morning, I drove to the address. A modest 2-story brick house on a quiet street. Wind chimes hung from the porch, gently clinking in the early spring breeze. A faded blue scooter lay on the front lawn. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I knocked. A woman in her late 30s answered. Auburn hair pulled into a bun. Tired eyes. Wary posture. "Yes." I swallowed. "Hi. I'm sorry to bother you. Are you Lorna Blake?" She nodded. "I am. Do I know you?" "No. But I believe we may have given birth at the same hospital. On the same day. January 4th, 2009. Riverbend Medical." Her face stiffened. "I know this is going to sound insane," I continued, "but I recently discovered that the boy I've raised for 15 years might not be my biological son, and that he may not be my husband's either." She stared at me. I pressed forward, gently. "There's a chance a mistake might have happened at the hospital." A nurse came forward. There were inconsistencies. Lorna leaned against the doorframe like her knees might buckle. "I don't want anything from you," I said. "I just want answers." She opened the door wider. "You'd better come in." The living room smelled like cinnamon and soap. On the couch, a teenage boy sat with earbuds in. He glanced up, saw me, then went back to his phone. His hair was dark, almost black, and he had the same narrow jaw as Liam, the same way of tilting his head when he was confused. "That's Jacob," she said. 15. Moody. Won't eat anything that isn't beige. My throat closed. "I've always wondered," she said softly, lowering herself onto the edge of the armchair. Jacob's blood type didn't match mine or Ray's. His pediatrician said it was possible, but there were other things. He never looked like anyone in our family. She looked away. "I never told Ray. He doesn't handle uncertainty well." I sat beside her. "I believe Jacob may be my biological son." Her eyes filled. "And my son?" "His name is Liam. He's smart, kind. He plays basketball. He loves snow, hates broccoli, and he's my whole world." She didn't speak for a long time. Then she whispered, "I had postpartum depression. Bad. I couldn't bond with Jacob for months. I always thought it was me, that I was broken, but maybe I felt deep down." I reached out but didn't touch her. "Would you," I asked gently, "be open to a DNA test? Just to confirm." She nodded slowly. "Yes, we should know." Later that night, I sat on the porch, watching Liam shoot hoops in the driveway. I honestly tried to imagine Jacob in his place, and I couldn't. I didn't want to. Liam was mine, blood or not. But I knew what was coming. 3 days later, Nathan called. His voice was low, measured. "Elaine, the results are in. Jacob is your biological son, and Liam is Lorna's." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I sank to the floor of my kitchen and cried until I had no breath left. Not for the science, not for the proof, but for the reality that 15 years of motherhood had been built on someone else's irreversible mistake. The next morning, I still hadn't told Liam. Every time I looked at him, I saw the child I'd sung to sleep, bandaged through falls, cheered from the bleachers. How could I look into those eyes and say, "You were never really mine," and worse, that your father knew, and left? I didn't sleep the night after the results came. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through every possible version of the conversation I needed to have with Liam, and none of them made sense. None of them ended with his face unbroken, with his voice calm, with his trust intact. The next morning, I checked Thomas's credit card activity. There were 3 charges, one at a motel on the edge of town, one at a restaurant I didn't recognize, and the third a flower shop. He wasn't alone. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred, until the part of me that still wanted to scream went silent. I didn't call him, didn't beg for explanation. He had made his choice. Later that afternoon, I got a text from Lorna. "Jacob's asking questions. I haven't told him yet. Maybe we should meet." We arranged to meet on Saturday, neutral ground, a public park near the edge of town, somewhere quiet, open where no one could overhear if things got too hard to hold inside. I told Liam we were meeting someone important, that I needed him to come with me. He didn't ask questions. He just pulled on his hoodie, stuffed his hands deep into the pockets, and followed me to the car. The sky was the color of damp concrete. The air had a bite to it. When we arrived, Lorna and Jacob were already there. Jacob looked taller than I remembered. His posture was guarded. He didn't make eye contact at first, but when he saw us walking toward them, his head tilted slightly, exactly the way Liam's did when he was trying to read a room. They stood, facing each other. 2 boys born on the same night. Swapped, raised, loved, and now returned to a truth neither of them had chosen. Liam turned to me, brows pulled tight. "Mom, what's going on?" I looked into his eyes and my heart cracked open. Lorna's voice was thin but steady. "Jacob, this is Elaine. She's your biological mother." The words dropped into the cold spring air like a stone. Liam's gaze whipped back to me. "What?" I dropped to one knee, reached for his hand, but he pulled away. Sweetheart, I whispered. There was a mistake. At the hospital. The day you were born. They gave me the wrong baby. I didn't know. I didn't, his voice broke. So I'm not yours. My chest caved. You are. Just. Not by blood. He stepped back. His face twisted, a war behind his eyes. Does Dad know? I nodded. That's why he left. Liam looked over at Jacob. So, you're me? Jacob didn't speak. He looked just as lost. The silence between them stretched and warped, and I felt it. Years of identity cracking beneath their feet. No one said another word. Liam turned away first. The ride home was silent. No music, no questions, just the steady hum of tires over pavement and the ache building behind my ribs. That night, he didn't come down for dinner. I left a plate outside his door. He didn't touch it. The next day, the same. On the third night, I found him sitting on the front porch after dark. Hoodie up, knees pulled to his chest, staring at nothing. I sat beside him, slow and quiet. Hey, said. He didn't look at me, just kept his eyes on the empty street. Am I going to have to go live with that woman? My heart split again. No, I said, voice cracking. No, sweetheart. No one is taking you from me. But she's my real mom. I'm your real mom, I whispered. Maybe not by blood, but in every other way that counts. He wiped his nose on his sleeve. I don't know who I am anymore. I placed a hand on his back. This time he didn't pull away. Neither do I said, but maybe we can figure it out together. The next morning, I sat across from Nathan in his office as he drafted the official notice to Riverbend Medical. The letter was sharp, clear, unapologetic. We know, and we're not staying quiet. They'll stall, Nathan warned. They always do. Delay, deflect, offer private settlements. But now that we have proof, it's just a matter of pressure and persistence. I nodded. We go all the way. I asked him if we should involve Lorna. I didn't want to drag her into a legal battle she didn't want. Nathan hesitated. She may not want what you want, he said. I'm not trying to take Jacob from her, I replied. I just want to know him. That's all. That afternoon, Lorna called. Jacob wants to meet you, she said quietly. Properly. He has questions. Despite everything, I smiled. I'd like that. Greg never came home. He never called. Never even texted to ask about Liam. The next thing I received from him was a letter from his lawyer, filing for divorce. No apology. No explanation. Just paperwork. And strangely, I was okay. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells in my own home. I wasn't bracing for cold silence or half-spoken resentment. I was still grieving, but I wasn't shrinking. That Wednesday, Jacob came to the house. He didn't say much at first. Just stood in the hallway, hands stuffed deep in his jacket pockets, eyes flicking to every photo on the wall like he was afraid to touch anything with his gaze. Would you like something to drink? I asked. He shook his head. Then, softly, I just want to see where I would have grown up. I showed him the family room, the backyard, the fence post where I'd marked Liam's height every birthday with a black Sharpie. He paused in front of a photo, me holding Liam, sunburned and smiling, at a 4th of July parade. That could have been me, he whispered. I swallowed hard. It still can be in some way. We sat for over an hour, talking slowly, carefully, about school, about music, about nothing at all. Just easing into the weight of being known. When he left, he hugged me. Stiff, awkward, but real. Later that week, Lorna called again. Liam asked if he could come over for dinner. I blinked. What did you say? I said yes. Of course I said yes. We agreed, no pressure, no pushing, just a meal, one step at a time. The next day, a letter arrived from Riverbend Medical, carefully worded, corporate, cold. They didn't admit fault, but buried deep in the phrasing was an offer, confidential mediation, an early sign that they knew they couldn't bury this forever. Nathan looked at me, serious. We can push this, but it won't be quick. If you want justice, real justice, we go public. We go loud. I looked out the window, then back at him. We go loud. That evening, I sat on the porch as the sun dropped behind the rooftops. In the driveway, two boys shot hoops, one laughing, one focused. Not brothers, not strangers, just two lives slowly circling each other, trying to make sense of what they'd been given. I lost a marriage. I lost the version of motherhood I thought was written in stone. But I didn't lose Liam. And I didn't lose the will to fight for the truth. Some mistakes can't be undone, but they can be faced. And sometimes, just sometimes, they can be healed.